Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Melisa Monti calling in from Portugal. Melisa works as a spiritual guide and Akashic record channeler, teaching highly sensitive, intuitive women how to feel grounded, safe, and confident as they learn to heal their wounds, remember their soul essence, and activate their medicine for the earth. So it's such an honor to have you on today, Melisa. Welcome on.
Thank you so much, Peter, for the invitation. I'm very excited for being here today and share a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. We're going to talk about the Akashic Records. We're going to talk about planetary ascension, soul purpose, planetary grid work, and conscious community. So we got a beautiful episode for everyone today. And so I'd love to invite you, Melisa, to share kind of how your spiritual awakening journey started for you.
Okay. So let's start by the very beginning of my life. So I'm originally from Argentina. I was born in Argentina in a small town, and I had a pretty nomadic upbringing. So since I was 9 months old, we started traveling around the world with my family, first to Berlin. We lived there 2 years for studies of my dad, and then we went back to Argentina for a year, and then we moved to the Netherlands when I was 4, and then I moved to Chile, south of Chile, when I was 11. And so my life was always like in constant movement, in constant adaptation of my environment, both physical but also cultural, socially, language-wise. It was like always forced to adapt, always forced to transform, and always very much even like shifting my identity, right? Since I was very, very small. And so in many ways, that has made me who I am today, and I'm very thankful for that experience. But also in many ways it was very hard, especially as a kid, right? The first thing that we want is to belong, and we want
Yeah.
to, feel safe, and we want to, fit in some way. And I was everything but that. I was everything but like the rest.
Right.
And even in Argentina, now maybe you can relate, even in your home country, I was different. I was not like the rest. I was not like all the people around me. I was not like my family, my cousins, my grandparents. And so, yeah, the first few years of my life, of course, you're not really conscious and aware of what's happening until you start going into puberty, pre-puberty, and then really, you start with the hormonal changes, and it's such a big change in your life that you go through. And so for me, the hardest part was when I moved from the Netherlands to Chile when I was 11. And so it was really like a drastical shift, because I had like such a free upbringing in the Netherlands, in which I was super safe on the street. I could just like bike. At 11, I was like, before even at 8, I think, biking to school alone, or like playing on the streets with my friends and walking to my neighbors and everything. And it was just like a very pure kind of childhood.
Yeah.
Very free. I could be whoever I wanted. There were no restrictions, society, no. And so we moved to Chile, in which I firstly had to really learn Spanish, even though my parents also from Argentina, and they always talked Spanish with me. When we moved, I really had to learn Spanish because I always spoke Dutch to my parents. And so I always had a really heavy accent, like a very like German kind of accent on my Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we moved, I had to go to school, and I really had to learn Spanish, no, especially writing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that was already like a big difference. But then also Chile is pretty, in those times, it's already changing, but it was really very conservative. And there's just so many kind of invisible rules that are placed on you of who you have to be and what is allowed and what is not. And especially on school, we had school uniforms, for instance, like we couldn't express through our clothes or through how we dress, that you had to have your hair in a certain way. Every time a teacher would come into the room, you had to stand up and say like, "Good morning, Mr." Whatever, like really, really like complete different culture.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
everybody,
culture shock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even like my parents always tell me the first day that I went to school, if all the classmates came to me and they started hugging me and like, hey, we're your new classmates and so on. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Because for example, even in the Netherlands, people are not so touchy like in Latin America.
Yeah.
So it was like so many different changes at once, but especially the what you have to become. So from a very young age at school and in society, you are asked like, what do you want to be when you study? And it's like you already had to have your whole life figured out like at 11. And you either wanted to be like a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or like something like very traditional, right? And I always wanted to study fashion design. So from the get-go, I was like, everyone's like, what do you mean? What do you mean fashion design? So that was in Chile. And besides that, all of the changing, all of the adaptation and so on, like many others, my parents were not very emotionally aware and they didn't like know how to talk about their emotions. So therefore they also didn't know how to give me the space to share my emotions and process my emotions and all of that. So I also saw my parents, of course, like handling with so many different things. And it was just like, okay, I just have to deal. This is life, I just have to continue with this, whatever. This is the life that I got. And I started to suppressing my emotions very, very heavily. Now, mind you, now with the awareness that I have, until that point, I was very much connected to nature. My parents also both are scientists, animal scientists, and what always they taught me is like the connection with the earth. They were always showing me in the forest, we would go and explore, look under rocks and like see the ecosystems that were living like under this tiny rock and look at the giant trees that have been here for centuries. And so I always was very amazed by the world and by nature itself. So, and also with the constant traveling, nature was always the only constant, the only thing that was always there and where I could just be myself and I didn't have to explain who I was, where I come from, which language I speak. I could just be there and I was like, okay, this feels like home. And with the consciousness that I have now, I also know that since a very early age, I already communicated with trees, with the land, and with birds mainly. So that was always present until 11, 12, 13 in Chile that I started to heavily suppress my emotions. Now, in the middle of the night, I would also around 13 start to have a lot of like night terrors, a lot of nightmares, but also waking up in the middle of the night, a lot of like entities and shadows looking at me, saying things into my ear, really like scary experiences with spirits.
Yeah.
And so that combined with the emotional suppression, it kind of created this like thick wall around me. And I became really like, distanced from my own emotions and from my own sensitivity. And so when I was around 13, 14, I started to develop an eating disorder and I became depressive and suicidal. And so that continued for 10 years in my life, in which it just seemed like I couldn't get out of this very dark cloud. And no matter how many psychologists, of course, I was like medicated for my depression and so many things, so many different therapists and this and that, and nothing seemed to really help me. And so I also experienced later on when I was 16, 17, my first partner, my first boyfriend that was very abusive, very verbally abusive, but also it got into physical violence. I, at 19, had my first sexual abuse experience. So it was like everything I started to carry on in my baggage, and all of this trauma, all of this pain, and it just kept on suppressing, as in like, this is life, we just continue, we just act as if like nothing happened and we just continue. But then I started also to develop like migraine already when I was like 13, heavily chronic migraine, also a lot of like stomach problems, and yeah, a lot of pain in my stomach, really like a lot of physical pain, chronic fatigue. I was always tired. It was just like I felt so heavy. Life felt so heavy. And this continued until 2018. So I studied fashion design in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I made that, at least
Nice,
in
nice.
my
I was gonna
dreams.
ask about that.
Yes, yes. And so I finished my studies. I got my first job in fashion. I decided, oh my God, this is not for me for sure, because I loved the creative part. I loved what I studied like so much. And later on I will tell you a little bit more, but it really gave me a good base to what I do today. And yeah, I loved it very much, but the real world, I understood like this is not for me. I didn't enjoy the fashion industry at all. So I decided to specialize in sustainability. And I moved to the Netherlands, back to the Netherlands in 2017 at 22 to do that. Now, the first winter in the Netherlands, I don't know if you've ever been to the Netherlands or the Nordic countries in Europe during winter. It is really depressive, to say the
Yeah,
least, because there's no sunlight. There's really no sunlight for months.
yeah,
So naturally, there is already there's really a phenomenon that happens, that people get depressed just because of the weather, because of the lack of the sun.
right.
And so with everything that I was already carrying, of course, I again entered a very depressive episode, and I was really suicidal. I was really like, I didn't want to be here no more. I didn't see the point anymore, because everything felt so heavy. Every time that I felt like I had like a dream or I had something that pushed me forward, it felt just, all the rest felt very heavy. So in 2018, it was in January, so in the middle of the winter, my parents were super worried because I was living in the Netherlands. They were still in Chile, and they couldn't really do much because they were far away. And so they had met this guy, Carlos, who gave Akashic Records readings. And they did a reading with him, and they had a really beautiful experience. And they called me and they said, Millie, would you be willing to do this and to have this session with Carlos? Because I think this will be really beneficial for you. It may bring you some spark of something. And so I had my first Akashic Records reading in 2018. And I remember I was in the living room, and I had like this big windows in front of me, and it was a really gray day, like really thick clouds. Like you don't really see anything of the sky, just like thick clouds. And so as we were going through the reading, I was crying. It was beautiful because I felt seen in a way that I've never ever felt seen. Because as I was telling you, for all of these years, I just adapted to whatever people and society expected of me, but I really didn't even dare to be myself. So I felt like nobody really knew me until that reading, in which I felt really super seen. And almost at the end of the reading, the clouds broke open and the sun started to hit my face.
Wow.
And I was just like goosebumps all over my body. And I said to Carlos, you cannot believe, like literally the sun is breaking through the darkness and hitting my face. And it feels quite literally like that. Like finally I can see the light after so many years of darkness. And so, yeah, that really changed my life for sure.
Wow.
Now, of course, as you know, these situations are like, they crack you open, but then the real work starts. Then
Yeah.
the real work starts. And it was a whole journey, of course, to start to remember. First, I had to heal. First, I had to look at everything that I was carrying within, everything that I had suppressed from my life, but also even like from my ancestors. There were so many things that I was carrying unconsciously. And my first medium to this part of this process was art. So I've always been a very creative person, but in those times I was just like very much into drawing and painting, and also journaling and writing. So I was working a lot with my hands, and without knowing, I was channeling through the art that I was creating. So I was channeling my higher self and spirit guides, and a lot of things. If you look back into the drawings that I've made in those times, were really channeled messages. And also, like, I would write some messages also on the drawings, and they were like really coming from a source that was beyond me. I was like in trance as I was creating, and I was drawing and painting, and then I would end and I was like, oh my God, who made this?
Mm-hmm.
So that was really my first part of my journey, first 2 years. And then before the pandemic in January in 2020, I joined my first meditation. So I never had meditated in my life. And I went to a group event, like a group meditation for connecting with your inner child.
Nice.
And yeah, that meditation also changed so much for me, because I was taken to a place that I could see all of the scenes of my life in front of me, and I could like scroll through as if it was like a folder and select the memory that I wanted to tap into and like go into that scene. And I remember I went back to a moment in my childhood when I was around 6 years old, and I remembered I did something very wrong. I was very spoiled as a child, and I took a bracelet from a store without paying because I really wanted that bracelet. And then my mom caught me. My mom caught me, and she was so angry. And she was like, Mary, this is really not okay. You have to think about what you did. And so tonight you will stay in your room and you will not eat. So you think and you reflect about your actions. And so in that meditation, I went back to that moment, and I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my God, this is the root of my eating disorder. I understood in that moment that I created this belief that when I don't act in a way that I'm good enough, or I'm proud of myself, or, you know, I'm a good girl, then I don't deserve to eat.
That's deep.
So really an act of self-punishment.
Yeah.
And so that experience with meditation really like made me see like, oh my God, how many things are in my unconscious that are really conditioning everything of how I look at the world, how I act, how I make decisions, everything that I do. And I just was like obsessed with like starting to unravel all of this. And so I started meditating almost like every day. I did all of the meditations, the 21 days with Deepak Chopra and all the gratitude, and started with mindfulness, and then slowly it went to inner child healing and connecting with your ancestors. And then little by little it went to third eye chakra activation, and then it went to meet your spirit guides, and then it went to connect with the Pleiadians. And you know, like it started to really, really fastly, go beyond just like meditation as a practice. But routine, I think around 4 or 5 months of meditating every day, I was already like astral traveling and trance journeying and doing all of these things without ever knowing what I was doing, right? Yeah, and that was like the moment that everything started to change very fastly, because I started to communicate with my spirit guide, with my ancestors, with again, everything that I had suppressed came back. I started to communicate with the trees. It was COVID times, so I was spending a lot of time alone. And so I was spending a lot of time in nature also. And it was like I could hear everything very clearly, and there was like no noise anymore. And little by little, that brought me to where I am today.
Beautiful.
Sharing exactly what I learned. I always say I don't share anything that I've not experienced myself. So everything that I teach and I share is based on my path.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I'm really curious, when you started connecting with your spirit guides again, what was it? Were they more angelic? How were you connecting with them? How were you communicating with them? You know, because there's so many ways to do that. So I'm just curious what opened up for you.
So the first connection that I made was kind of astral astral traveling journey and meditation, and I could visually see my spirit guide, one of them, one of my main, which is a deity. So I also start to understand that my main psychic sense and my clairsense is clairvoyance. So I'm very visual with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I see everything very clearly. So yeah, firstly there. But the thing is, so I'm very connected also with Egypt deities, Egyptian deities. And so one thing that came up very much is that once I did this journey and I connected with this deity that also revealed his name and showed in a way that I never knew about this deity before, but exactly how I saw him in the journey, I started to Google the name and it appeared exactly how I saw.
Wow.
So that was a big confirmation, but also with that, I could also understand that he had been there all my life, because the hawks are a big topic throughout the rest of my life. My mom worked with hawks when I was younger. I was always fascinated by birds, but especially the hawk and the eagle. And I even made a collection when I studied fashion design inspired in the hawks.
Oh, wow.
So it was like the inspiration and the consciousness has always been with me throughout my life. So yeah, it was really amazing to really have that clear confirmation and also connect the dots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when the deities would communicate with you, it was more through images.
Yeah, through at beginning through image, but also through signs. You know, the typical things. I have a special oracle deck, and there's a one card that is really related to that deity. So it was always also coming up, yeah, in dreams, physically, also in images that you see around you. Yeah, I mean, in many different ways.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of your story too. It's like, you know, growing up, I moved a lot and nature was the same. It was like where we went with my family for vacations, right? Like to go, we'd go to national parks and things like that. So, yeah, and the art was really saved me when I was, in my dark night of the soul, the art channeling that through and bringing it out and like allowing my hand to move how it needed. Same thing, I would be done with something and I'd be like, "Whoa, did I just create that?" And it was like something was guiding my hand, it was in some way, like spirit was guiding me. So it was really beautiful. And yeah, I think it's something people don't talk about that much, but I know for a lot of people it's really helped in their journey is the art and really creativity, whatever that looks like for somebody. It might be journaling, it might be making music, it might be, it doesn't have to be physical painting, it can be so many different things. You could be like drawings in the sand, like little designs. It doesn't matter, as long as you're clear, moving that energy. And so I'm really curious, like, in because I think a lot of people are facing this where, they've suppressed their emotions for however many years. So how did you start to unpack that? Like, what was some of the most effective techniques, and what helped you move through that the most?
Yeah. So as I said, for at the beginning it was mainly art, because art and journaling, but because at this point I just didn't know how to give words to my feelings and to my emotions. And I know a lot of people struggle also with this too. They feel very intensely, but they don't know how to find the right words to explain what they're experiencing, especially also with spiritual experiences. And like, I know if you come out of an ayahuasca journey and you have no words how to explain what you just experienced. So that was for me at the beginning. I didn't have words, so the visual was very important for me in that stage. So understanding the colors that I was using, the shapes that I was making, had a reflection on my state, emotional state. So that was a little bit at the beginning also to understand and to, especially what I was drawing was very much connected to my soul essence. So really it gave me like a mirror onto, okay, who am I at core level?
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, what I just also said, meditation, because it helped me, first of all, clean out all of the noise. And so just like come back to my center and to my core. And I have different techniques also that I teach, which is similar to how I experience it, is first like unpacking the emotion. Firstly, understanding, okay, on physical level, what am I experiencing? How is my body feeling? Do I feel like warmth? Do I feel cold? Do I feel a tingling? Do I feel pain? And then, okay, what if I could give this pain a color? If I could give this pain a form, what would it be? And like little by little, unpacking and giving it like a shape and giving it form. And then, okay, how does this form make me feel? If I really tune into this object that I feel that I have here in my belly, for example, and then little by little starting to recognize the different layers of the emotion. So the physical aspect, the mental aspect, if there were like thoughts, the emotional aspect, the feelings that were connected to it, and then little by little, okay, when was the last time that I felt this way? What triggered it? And then little by little being able to just like come back to the root of that emotion of what is really trying to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, it's that, right? It's information that is just showing something and bringing something to the surface.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was the rewiring of it, right? Like, for example, there was my first girlfriend in high school, right? Like, she was the first one that kind of broke my heart, right? I felt betrayed. She chose another boy, and so I was holding on to that for many years, right? And I remember there came a time when I was like, we were like 13, 14 years old. Nobody really knows what they're doing when they're 13, 14 years old. I was like, this is silly for me to be holding on to this. It's like I'm continuing to take the poison, like I'm continuing to feel, I'm reliving it by not forgiving her, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in that moment, I just chose to see her as the little girl, like a 13-year-old, right? And to be like, just send her love and forgiveness and be like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like she didn't know what she was doing. And so I just forgave it. And it was like this weight off my shoulder, and little moments like that for me of like really facing those aspects. And then I think the body for me was another way, right? Like I went and trained in myofascial unwinding. So I was able to unwind certain parts of my body that were holding these experiences that were actually completely suppressed to the point where I didn't even remember them until my body started moving in those ways. So it was like going into the meditation, having someone there to hold the space for me and to like physically hold my body in certain ways. And then from there, I was able to access those memories. Like there was one of a little boy around 10 years old when I was like 9, 10 years old. We went to visit him in Florida and I was swimming. I was making like motions like swimming and then the memory like flooded back where this boy was trying to drown me. And I think he was just like angry and frustrated with him, from the way he was being treated by his parents, right? And so there was a level of compassion and a level of understanding. And then from there, I was able to forgive him and really let that go. And also release it from the body too, where my body could go through the motions, I could rewire it in my head and then release that. So did you ever experience those somatic physical releases as well through these experiences?
For sure that that in that moment that you feel that your body is really reacting to touching those emotions and to coming back to the unconscious. I only remember one really specific moment, but that was not about necessarily something from this lifetime. So I was in 2021. I went to a healer, an older man in the Netherlands, and he worked with a lot of, it's like a doctor. You go to his house, he has like his consult, and he just treats with whatever you need at that moment. So he doesn't have just like one technique. And so I said to him, I've carried this kind of sadness my entire life. I remember also my dad always telling me like, oh, you always have like sad eyes or sadness in your eyes. And I don't know, I had like a type of anxiety and sadness always carrying with me. And I went to him, he laid me down, and he started to feel into my heart. And he started feeling, you are carrying something from 7 generations of your feminine line, no? From Ancestry. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know. It was
Right.
the first time that someone was saying something like that to me. And I was like, yeah, sure. Well, then he started proceeding to take that out of my body. My God, Peter. So it was like kind of, I can explain like Reiki or energy work, in which he started to pull, not even touching my body, but he started to pull it out. And it was a physical pain. It was a physical pain that I was experiencing, as if my heart was like opening up, and so much physical pain started to release from my heart. And he was like, as he was doing it, was crying, as if he was also feeling it for me. And I will never remember that sensation. Even like days after, I felt like it was like almost like a wound. And that was really, really powerful. And yeah, it was related to a wound of that family line, of connected to war and having to escape your home and having to escape your safety zone, and always being on the run, and always being placing ways in places that didn't feel like home, and which you couldn't really root and settle. So it was this sadness for what you had to be like forced to leave your home and forced to leave this safe place. Yeah, and that was really, really powerful. And I remember that this is something, a different topic, but he said something to me that really stayed with me, which was that he said to me, I just did 1 session with him. Sometimes some people go more sessions, but he was like, no, this is everything. Like, you don't need more. And he said to me, when you're ready, go look into your ancestry, the medicine that they carry, because you have that in your DNA. The skills that they have, the wisdom that they learned, all of the things that they learned and developed in their lifetime, and awaken that and activate that within you, because that is the medicine that you are gonna carry forward to share with others, because that's exactly how I did what I do today. And that was really interesting. It took me a few years until I really understood what he was saying. But yeah, basically it helped me a lot, because before my last grandfather passed away, I had the opportunity to sit with him and ask him all of these questions about other family members and, great grandfathers and people that I didn't know, about what they did, about their passions, about their dreams, about the dreams of my grandfather, for instance. And I created like a map of all of these peoples and all of their, not only their wounds, but also their positive traits. And so I could connect from my family line, from the father side, and also from my mother's side, that my family has been connected to the earth for so many generations, whether that is because they literally work like in agriculture and they, work with the land, but also in a way that they had their hobbies to harvest their food, or they cared for plants, and also the animals. So it was really, really engraved into my DNA, this deep rooted connection with the earth. And that started to make so much sense of why I felt that so deeply.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, I can relate to that in the sense that like I've been, I don't know that much about my ancestors. I mean, I know back like great grandparents and things like that, but further back it's hard to connect. But there's these pieces that come from each one, but also there's past lifetimes that I think for me personally impact even more than my blood lineage, because from those lifetimes, I had all kinds of different experiences where I was Native American for different generations. I was Native in Colombia. It wasn't Colombia then, but I was Native in Colombia in one past lifetime. I've seen ones where I was royalty in France, some sort of king, something like this, or a prince, I don't know. And then but those pieces like from the nature connection and from Japan, I had lifetimes where this lifetime I found Reiki. That was like one of the first things I found. Really had a deep experience. First really deep experience was with my teacher when I got my attunement, when I received the Reiki to serve others with it. And then when I found Kundalini yoga, being able to, it was like my soul was looking for that. And then when I found it, it was like, oh, this is what I was looking for. And like my third eye blasted open and I had all these profound experiences. And, those confirmations for me throughout my journey just remind me of like, okay, it's going to be really clear, throughout the journey what I'm meant to be doing and just following those breadcrumbs. But like certain things, like my grandma's dad, my great grandfather was a hunter, and he hunted different animals. And when I was a kid, I would like sit and connect with the skins and like really honor them, And that was, I never wanted to, I don't ever want to like kill animals, That's not something that I'm interested in, but the honoring of it and that kind of thing I can, connect to. So yeah, I think that's
That's
a really
beautiful.
beautiful thing to do is connect with the ancestry for sure.
Yeah. No, and it's incredible when you start to remember these little bits of information through, especially from your childhood, right? That you have like you do these things so naturally without even knowing why, and then you're like, oh my God, it starts making sense of why I already had that, those codes in me, and it was just like so natural to do those things in this way. And then as adults, we start to question everything of why do I feel it like that, or why am I do I express in a certain way, and it's like remembering that actually in your original state everything was fine all along and we just returning back to that state.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So for your journey, I'm really curious how you got into Akashic reading, and then maybe you can run us through like what an Akashic reading session would look like if somebody wanted to work with you.
For sure. So as I said, it all started because I had my own reading first, right?
Hmm.
So that experience changed my life, and so I will forever be grateful for that. And so I also had a second one with him in 2021, very beautiful, also in a different way, because I was already so much more aware of everything. And then in 2023, not even so long ago, 2023, I was in Italy. And so I'm half Italian by blood from both sides of my family.
Hmm.
And I was already starting to research my connection with my Italian heritage and Italian witchcraft specifically.
Hmm.
So I was doing that, and I was in Italy. I have a little bit of family left, and we were there. I spent my birthday there with my family, with my Italian family too. And it was just like this big kind of also homecoming because I felt so at home there. And then I saw on Instagram of a friend that I followed, a friend of a friend, that she was giving Akashic Records initiations. And I didn't know her at all. I just know her through this other friend, also an Argentinian girl, an Argentinian woman living in Mallorca in Spain. And I don't know why, I immediately felt that I need to do this. I need to do this. It didn't make sense at all. There was nothing rational about it. And it was like 1 week ahead, like in maybe 9 days, it was the initiation online. I just registered. I didn't know. I just felt it. I registered. Oh my God. And then the journey began because it was really not an easy journey to be honest, the initiation. I love to be real about these topics because there's so many people that are talking about like high frequency is like love and light and it's gonna be so amazing and so high. You're gonna be full with bliss. Well, it was not like that.
Right.
It was not like that at all. So 1 week prior, on a Sunday, and the initiation was on a Saturday. On a Sunday, we were traveling back to the Netherlands from Italy. We were in the airport. I had gotten my bleed that day also. I was really sensitive, but I was like more sensitive than ever. And so I was like I already started like feeling the build up until we reached the airport and I got like a full-blown panic attack, which I hadn't had since I was teenager. So everything started to come in, all of the sound, all of the people, especially sound and light. It was just like, oh my God, I was like, my whole system collapsed with all the information that I was receiving. And I didn't even know what was happening because I was not aware that this could happen because of the Akashic Records initiation. And I thought, oh my God, I cannot do this. I'm feeling physically ill. I got 4 days of fever after that when I got home. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not feeling well. I should cancel, all of these things. Until the day before I started to feel well again. I was like, okay, let's do this. Then I understood that this was the energetic initiation of everything that required me to be able to hold that field, right? Especially the first few months. It's like the initiation itself. I was like, when we went into the Akashic Records, you astral travel, and it's like you leave your body, and at least this is how my teacher does it. And when I came back into this realm, I needed like 30-40 minutes to just like come back. I felt like so dizzy. I couldn't even speak. I was like so out of my body. And even the next few days, I tried to go out of my house with the records open to go into nature because I was living next to a forest, and it was just too much. Everything started to come, like all of the senses were like open. So it was really, really, really tough at the beginning. But so the initiation is a whole weekend, that at least how my teacher does it, in which you get attunement. It's like also maybe like Reiki similar, in which you get the implantation of the key to enter the Akashic Records. She shares how to get into the Akashic Records, the opening prayer, all of these things. I know that so many different people have different versions and different perceptions and perspective on how to enter the Akashic Records. Some people have like spontaneous access, some people are initiated. I would recommend you to get initiated because it's not easy. At least from my experience, it's not just like, it's nice to have the guidance and the support in that journey. And so level 1 is basically you learn to first open the records for yourself. So it's not like you immediately learn to open the records for others. You first need to build the energetic capacity to create a relationship with the Akasha, to understand it, to start to also practice and develop your psychic senses, because this is a skill. Like, we all have it, we all can do it, but it's just a skill, a muscle that you need to develop and you need to train. And especially the trust part, because so many times we receive information and we channel, especially at the beginning, and then we second guess ourselves so much. we are like, how can I know if this is a real channeling? What, maybe it's my imagination, maybe it's a thought, you know? So this is the part that really requires a lot of practice and a lot of training to develop that skill and that trust. So that was at the beginning. And then in 2024,
Well, how
around
many
the same time.
how many levels are there? So that was level 1, and then what happens after
Yeah.
that?
Then I did level 2 in 2024, which is so you can open the records of others.
Okay.
And also you can open the records not only of people, of animals, of trees, of the land, of a house, yeah, even of Mother Earth. Like you can open the records of just consciousness.
Wow.
And I don't know if other people have other levels. It's not like Reiki, but my teacher has level 1, 2, and mastery. And so mastery is basically that you get initiated to initiate others.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do that level yet?
This year is my
Okay.
intention to do it. I
Okay.
already wanted to do it in March, but it's coming, like, you know, it's building up, and it's like, okay, still preparing. But for sure this year I will do the mastery with my teacher. I'm following her lineage. I really love how she works. She's very grounded, and I really connect with the way that she teaches. And so when I learned how to open the records of others, it was never my intention to do readings.
Okay.
It was never my intention. I just wanted to open the records of the land, of the trees, you know, these type of things, of my cat.
Right.
But it was never my intention. And so I did the initiation beginning of November. And in December, I already started to get clients of people asking me, Melly, do you do readings? And I was like, yeah, kind of. Very shy at the beginning, and just like charging very low so that I could just practice, because I was like, oh my God, I have to practice with myself, but not with others. And, you know, you're like, just like very, very much like, what do I do? So I started to give readings, and that started to come. And then in January I got more. And then so every month I started to get readings asked and readings booked, and it started to move by its own. And it's really, I will tell you now about what the Akashic Records are, because it's really a living field. It is a consciousness of its own. It's like, I don't have to do anything for people to come to me to ask for readings, besides that I, of course, share about what I do and share that I'm available to do it, right? But it's incredible how people find you and how people come to you. And it's exactly when they need it, at the exact time, at the capacity that they have to receive. And yeah, it's incredible. But so I've been doing it ever since.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So let's say somebody wants to come see you. What can they expect when they do a session with you?
Yeah. So very shortly, how I understand the Akashic Records is the vibrational field of the universe, of reality. So the same way that we have material and we have solid matter, so atoms that are vibrating at a lower density, and it creates this physical reality, we also have a layer of this reality that is vibrational. And that layer stores information in the form of vibration. And that is a layer that has a memory, the same way as like water has memory, and everything has a memory in the universe. And so you can access that layer of vibrational memory and vibrational imprint. And that is what we know as the Akashic Records. This is my interpretation. Of course, there's people that say like, oh, it's a source, very close to source. It's very pure. It's guarded, that for sure. It's a very pure energy field in which you cannot enter without consent the records of someone else, because your access to the records will be denied. It will be taken from you. So it's a very pure source, a very guarded source. And also there's no polarities there. So it's a field of just information. We cannot access that to understand what will be the future, or because we understand that there are different timelines that take us there, but there's just information that we can take, and we have free will to either act on it or not. Now, a reading with me looks like this. I offer the space of a reading around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And in this session, in this space, you get to ask up to 5 questions, plus the question that I always ask for you at the beginning, which is, what is that your soul wants you to remember? Because a lot of the times we ask a lot of things, but there's something specific that our soul wants us to know at that moment. So we always start the session by, of course, people know already have all of the information. We start by writing down all of the questions that they bring, that can be from anything. They can be from about past lives, how they impact your current reality, if there's any trauma or pain that you need to be looking at right now or processing. It can be something about your physical body or any illnesses. It can be about your career. It can be about your soul purpose, what you came to experience here on Earth. It can be so many different things. And so we note down the questions, and we always do an anchoring meditation, an anchoring practice. So we can both just settle into the space, but it's also a way for me to come into a frequency, into a mental state in which I can access the Akashic Records. And so there's the opening prayer. It's a very, as I said, it's a very clean space. So there's an entrance and there's an exit. So there's an opening prayer, which I say in my native language, my mother tongue, in Spanish. And for that, I always ask for the full name of the person. I say the opening prayer, and as soon as I say the opening prayer, I always stay with my eyes closed, because I always say I have 3 main senses, main clairsenses. So clairvoyance, I'm clairsentient, so I feel it in my body, specifically if there's like any emotional blockage or any physical pain or energetic blockage. I also hear, so I'm clairaudient. Sometimes there comes like a specific words, or even like sometimes songs, and also like the classical ear ringing I have a lot. So through all of these senses, with my eyes closed, I start to receive information immediately. As I ask the question, for example, what is it that your soul wants you to remember? I start receiving, especially visually, scenes, not only like images, but really it's like a moving scene. It's like a scene of a film, and they show me all around that specific information and message that needs to come through. Now, most of the times, the message is very symbolic. So it's not like always quite literal. Sometimes in past lives, I can see more literal things and more aspects of that life. But in many messages, it's also very symbolic. So it's symbolic, metaphoric message that resembled something that in that way of expressing, the person can receive the message. So it's very, very specific all for each person. I just receive, but whatever comes through is whatever that person can receive at that moment. So every reading is totally different on the level of depth and of what comes up. And we go through all of the questions until they receive all of the answers that they need. They have the clarity. They feel clear. They feel aligned and real again with the sense of direction. And we have a closing prayer. We close the session, and that's it. And then there's after 7 days, I always check in with them to see how everything is going, how it's integrating, if they need anything. And it's always incredible, everything that happens. Oh my God. From women who have lost babies, that they be able to get pregnant again. I don't know. People that like get really like amazing opportunities that are so much more aligned to what they were experiencing before. I don't know. There's just like incredible things that happen after these readings.
Beautiful. And so are your spirit guides involved at all? And their spirit guides, are they interacting, or this is separate?
Most of the times, if they don't ask specifically, sometimes they may appear, but not every time. This is not how I work. I think every channeler has their own way of entering the records and working with the records. I don't necessarily need the spirit guides to come through. Usually this is also because, in my experience, when spirit guides come through, it is because it's like either an initial connection, because a person has lost this connection or has lost the awareness that they are guided, protected, and supported. Or in some way they need to connect. There's a message from their spirit guides specifically, or they ask for it. But in a lot of times, sometimes they are already, a lot of the times the women or the people that come to me to do readings, they are already super spiritually developed. So they already have that connection. And so that there's no need to reinforce something that they already experience. So it depends on everyone.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful. And so, was there anything else you wanted to add about the Akashic Records before we continue on to the next thing?
No, it's just, I don't know how you've experienced it, but I feel for many years or for a long time, the Akashic Records was not something that was really spoken about or was very like known within the spiritual community and spiritual spaces. In Latin America, it was really much a thing already for a long time, but maybe I don't know if it's in Europe or in other parts of the world, it was not really something like you would say Akashic Records, and most people would look like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And I feel like it's coming like very much to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm in that field, so maybe that's different, but I feel like a lot of people are coming to me like, oh my God, it's just like calling me. It's just calling me. And it's like, I feel there's something connected to the purity of information, of the source of the truth and the information that is stored there, that is like very vital for us to reconnect with at this point of humanity. Something that comes through a lot is the idea that in the times that we're living in, there's a lot of manipulation of the truth. There's a lot of manipulation of what we see in the reality. Mm-hmm. And so there's this calling all of the time, connect with the source, connect with your own truth, connect with your own essence, connect with the essence and the source of Mother Earth, connect with your soul. There's like a lot of like, come back to your original state, come back to your truth. Mm-hmm. And so I feel there's something in the Akashic Records that invites you back into that state, and that's why so many people are feeling called to it.
For sure. For sure. So if people want to work with you, where can they reach out or sign up? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have my website. You can book it through my website. You can book it through Instagram. There's also like a direct link to book it on Instagram. You can send me a message if you want to chat first. Yeah, or email me, all of these ways.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll drop all those links in the description for people to reach out to you. So yeah, that's amazing. I think I've only done like a soul fragment retrieval before where the facilitator went into the Akashic Records and brought different pieces back for me. But like an Akashic record reading, I'm not sure. I might have done one, but it's not super clear right now. I don't know if I actually have ever done one. So yeah, I'd love to do one with you one day. That would be amazing.
For sure. Whenever you're ready, whenever you feel the call.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then I'm curious about the community that you're facilitating and started with the grid work, and can you share a little bit about the intention of that and how this all started for you? Because that's how I originally found you, was a post you made where you were like, it's time to all come together and let's do this. And I was like, all right, I got to bring her on the podcast and talk about this. So yeah, I'd love to hear like how that started for you and what inspired you to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think so many of us can relate to this feeling of loneliness and of feeling of not really finding your people, even in the spiritual communities. I've always felt like I was always wondering after my awakening, after that I remembered like my essence and my truth, and I started channeling. I started to wander now in different communities, especially like spiritual, like going to different events and different gatherings. I lived in an eco community in Ibiza, and I did all of these things. And I just never seemed to find people that I could relate to. And I mean that in a way of I'm very grounded, and I love to see spirituality also in a grounded way, as in like I'm human. I love my humanness and I don't try to escape that. And so I just didn't relate to a lot of people in the spiritual community that were just like, maybe, I don't know if escaping this reality, but it was like a lot about also about how you talk, about how you wear. It's just like another mask, you know? It's like I had that big experience in Ibiza in which I'm very introverted naturally. I mean, if you talk with me one-on-one or we're talking about a topic that I'm really passionate about, I can talk and talk and talk. But if you put me in a group and of people, especially people that I don't know or people that are from a different vibe or just like different topics, I am super introverted. Like I will be in the corner like that and be like looking, analyzing. So in that community, I remember I was so, yeah, I felt like also an alien within a community that I thought that I would relate to. And everyone was super extroverted, and it was about like who is the most extrovert and who can sing the loudest and who can like speak the loudest and say the most bold thing and do the most bold thing. And I was just like, yeah, that's not me. Like I am very much about, I am about listening. I love silence. I love to be in my cave, in my isolation cave. And I'm just a very calm spirit and very grounded. And the same way that I love to talk about depth and about soul and about spirit and about ancient knowledge and all of that, I also don't care about like talking about like emotions or the human part, or you know, like the challenges that you're experiencing at work level. Like I don't escape that. And so I always found like, where are the people that not in between, but like you're not like one or the other. It's like we're just ourselves, you know. Like I just want to connect with people that are kind, that have the same values as me, that like creativity, like to express, and they can just be themselves, you know. You don't have to have a label placed on top. And so I was wondering, and at one point I was like, there's no people like me, you know. There's like, I don't know where I can find people like that. And especially also with the part of like being an earth keeper and communicating with the earth and doing grid work and land healing, it's a very lonely, can be a very lonely path and journey, because this is something that you do that you're not getting paid for. It's not like you're offering. It's not something that you do for the outside. It's something with you and your connection with the land and you and the connection with earth. It's for nobody else. And so I never, in those moments, I never connected with anyone who felt that humbleness and that devotional towards their work and their spirit that goes beyond just like what you get paid for, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I just wondered. And then at one point, this is about social media. I don't know if you experience this the same, but if you want to be seen, you first have to see yourself, and you have to first allow yourself to really be safe in the fullness that you are. So once I embraced this part of me and I started to share it more online and share it more with people around me, sharing about how I communicate with the earth, my devotional path, I started to share in my own very grounded perspective, the way that I see the world and the way that I experience things. And that started to attract the people that were also trying to look for the same kind of vibe. So it was not something to look outside of myself. Maybe it was something to create, right? Something to lead from. And so that started to bring my soul family and my people together, and who not necessarily are part of like the spiritual community. There's people from all over the world, all ages also. I love having like really wise older souls in my circle and around me. Like I love that so much. And yeah, so that started to unravel. And then actually that same time when I was in Ibiza in 2023, I was already working with my own Akashic Records. And I got this message that I needed to travel the world, and I needed to write a book, and I needed to take women with me, and I needed to visit like different indigenous communities in different parts of the world. And at that moment I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, I don't have the resources to do that. Like, what are you, like, I didn't understand what it was coming from. And so with the years, I started to get like bits and pieces of this message and this vision. And last year, I think around September, October, the vision started to become so much more clear. And so it was really an invitation to journey and pilgrimage around the world to different sacred sites and energy vortexes around the world to start connecting directly to the source of Mother Earth. So basically these energy vortexes, or what we also know as the Earth chakras, but also different parts of the world that are not the chakras, but just sacred sites, they are places where the energy of the Earth literally cracks open. So it's like a direct tunnel, direct access to pure Mother Earth energy and information and consciousness. And so the vision and the message was really much about taking people, especially women was in the vision, to those places and start listening again to Mother Earth and to start listening again to that relationship that we have towards her, besides any manipulation of the truth or any distortion of reality. Because they were showing us in the Akashic Record as if the earth itself had a layer, it was shown like a paper layer, and that we were being sold or we've been told that the reality of what was happening to earth was this paper layer, when it was not. It was just like a facade. And so it was an invitation to go to the source, go directly to the source. And the first part that I was called to go was Egypt, or is Egypt. Still haven't gone. And so I was like, okay, let's gather people that are with the same mission, earth keepers, land healers, grid workers, spirit workers, who are also feeling this call to work directly with the consciousness of Mother Earth, tend to her, listen to her, and bring up that information so that we can continue spreading it with our communities locally. And once I started to share this, and this post blew up, and I created this community space, people started to talk about like, oh yeah, I want to learn how to astral travel. Oh no, I want to, or I lost my sense how to astral travel and I want to recover that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not necessary. We don't have to astral travel to do this. But I got a really big slap of humbleness in that moment. I don't know everything. And so it became it was like a very crucial, important part of the message, actually, that in first place, we don't need to physically go to all of these sacred sites to do this work. We can do it through the astral layer. We can do it through astral traveling to these places and to these energy vortexes, so that we already start doing this work wherever that we are in the world. Because as this group was forming, we are already in all continents, but besides Antarctica and Arctic, we are in all continents. So it's beautiful how we are already creating a grid around the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where we are at. There's the community space. So for people who want to connect, want to share experiences, want to find people that are in your area that are working or connecting with the same topics, where you can learn maybe from others, where you can ask questions and just find people that are like you. You have that aspect. And then we have also the ones that are really committed to doing the grid work, but also have already kind of done this before or already had some experience in this, so that they can really be sovereign in this way and have the energetic hygiene to do this type of work, and
Right.
the awareness of what goes on, because as you know, like these type of things go also hand in hand sometimes with some energetic attacks and all of these things. So it's very important that you are aware of what you're doing.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. It's like there's a lot to it that, people may not realize when they're going into it, because there's these malevolent forces that are trying to stop these things, right? That are working very hard for these things to not be happening. So I think it's really important work. I know of a few really small groups of people that have been doing this. I know that the Mamos in Colombia are doing this kind of work from the Sierra Nevadas, and then they have little groups that go around the world and do this kind of work. They call it pagamentos, where they give these offerings to the, which literally translates to payments, right?
Mhm.
But like they're doing offerings of music and different, depending on what the energy and the spirits of the land tell them, they'll give like either coins or the vibration of the music and the intention from the heart gets stored into a piece of cotton, and then that gets placed into the earth next to one of the guardian trees. And usually there's a guardian rock that they will come to and ask for permission to continue. Sometimes they'll say no. That's happened, and I've done some work with them. So I did some work with them in Wyoming and South Dakota, which was really beautiful. But there are different groups doing this kind of work. But like you said, it's hard to make income from this. It's not something that even most people do, right?
Mhm.
Unless they, are having a trip or a retreat, right? And this is involved, which sometimes happens. And so, yeah, it's really interesting and really powerful work. I feel really called to it as well. And so when I was talking to you last time before the podcast, we talked about how, if we get enough people, there can be this network where people can be like, oh, you can stay at my house when you're doing this, or, I know people there that can, house you for that time when you're doing the work. And I believe with this kind of purposeful work, spirit opens up ways and finances come, and you know, clients come, and whatever needs to happen for these trips to align. So I just wanted to mention that, there's the seven chakras, right? The main chakras of the planet. Then you have the five on top of that, which makes 12. With those five are like highly energetic portals, right? And then when those 12 are open, then the 13th gate opens in Moscow, Russia. At least that's what the spirit has shown me, and I've read it online. Excuse me. And so I was born there in Moscow, Russia. So I thought that was really interesting that, with the 13 gates, I don't know if I'm just not attached to it, but there's synchronicity there, that's the last gate. So I think it's a really beautiful thing that you've organized. And so there's a Telegram group, right, that people can join now?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so we can drop that into the description as well for people to join and be part of that if you feel connected to this kind of work. And otherwise, a lot of the things that you're doing will be on your Instagram as well, right?
for sure. Yes, you can
Okay.
always find that or just send me a message with any question.
Okay. Okay, beautiful. And so the next question I have is, we were talking a little bit before the podcast about soul purpose and how some people think that when they align with it, everything's just going to be ease and grace and flow, and everything's just going to be easy, right? And that's not always the case. For some people it is, but not always, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's a little bit as I was sharing with about my initiation into the Akashic Records, that high frequency energy is not easy peasy lemon squeezy, because it will shake quite literally everything that is not aligned to that frequency. And that can be like physically illness and like really intense experiences, but also emotional trauma can come up so that you can just process it and get it out of your system. Like so many things happen, right, for that alignment. So in the same way, I love to share that we never can really derail from our soul purpose, because since we were born, everything that we've experienced is tied to that soul purpose, so
Mhm.
to what the soul came to experience.
Right.
So for example, if you look at my journey and everything that I had to endure, may it be like trauma with a capital T or with a small t, everything that I endured was important for me to come to do this work. If I didn't go through that really dark time in my life and I didn't lose my gifts, I also wouldn't know the importance of it and how to even reclaim those and how to learn that process to share to others and to really share it from a very embodied way. So yeah, every little aspect when I look back into my journey was necessary. And so in that way, the soul purpose was always there. Even when I felt like I lost myself, I was still living through my soul purpose.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about soul purpose, a lot of us have this conception that purpose, or the word purpose, is only tied to our job and to our career.
Right.
When on soul level, soul purpose is just connected to your soul essence. And so when you are aligned with your soul essence, you carry through your purpose in any aspect of your life, with your relationships, on work level, yes, but also, yeah, who you just are in life. So with a stranger that you meet on the street, you know, like you can share your purpose at any moment and any time of the day. So this is important to remember, that it goes beyond just work and how we make money in our career, and it's really aligned to your soul essence. Now, what was the question exactly, so that I remember that I answered correctly?
Just basically that it's not so easy for some people, right?
Yes. So coming to that awareness that a lot of times people come to me, for example, for readings, and they have this concept that they feel very blocked every time they feel like they are moving towards the right direction, that they are aligned. There's a block, there's sickness, or they feel like a heaviness, or they feel they can't do it. And like physically, there's like, or energetically, there's a blockage, and they feel like, oh, if it's this hard, it is not for me. It shouldn't be a challenge. If it's really for me, if it's really my soul path, then everything should be easy, doors should open, the pathway should be open, clear, everything in flow, nothing should be hard. And I think that a lot of people have this concept. And I mean, for a long time, I also wished and I believed and I wanted that to be true. But it's just not how this reality at least work. We live in a world in a reality where there's polarities, and we need as much as one pole of the flow and the simpleness and the ease, as much as the other pole of chaos, of challenges, of hardness and hardship, because this is how we learn, how we grow. So if everything would be easy peasy, lemon squeezy, then we wouldn't really grow, and we really like challenge ourselves and understand, okay, how can we evolve and grow from this situation?
Yeah.
So just to say that, of course, there's nuances to it, but that something is difficult and something is challenging doesn't mean that it's not for you. My path has been anything but simple. I know that nowadays, I was having a call yesterday with a friend from the Netherlands, and she was saying, yeah, you make it seem so effortless. Like from the outside, it's like ping pong, you manifest, you do this, and everything feels like for you, everything is easy.
Uh-huh.
but also she knows my life, and she knows like, I know that it's not true, and I know that you work damn hard. I know that you have a lot of discipline and motivation. I know how low you've fallen, and every time that you rise up and you rise up and you rise up, like, you know, like this path is very challenging, especially if you devote your life to do spirit work and to be of service. It's your life, right, is like the constant mirror of where you still have a place to grow and how you can amplify your field so that you can sustain also more people or more capacity in your work, right? Capacity we created through these challenges. And every time you face a new challenge and you overcome it and you learn how to grow from it, you create more capacity to hold yourself, hold life, and hold others.
Right.
And so it's just a reminder to not run away from the challenges. And yeah, and it's also it's easier said than done, of course, when you're in the middle of a challenge, or like you're thousands euros in debt, or you feel like you just broke up with your partner of 20 years, and or your parents just died. Like, nobody can prepare you for those type of challenges, right? And it's very hard to go through it. But if you stay in that zone of like, my life is hard and this is all really bad, I've been there many, many years, you never will grow from that situation. You will never see what's on the other side of that challenge.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I would even add that purpose isn't, I used to think that purpose is just one thing, right? Like I'll find one thing, I'll do that, and I'm good, I'm cruising. But I think that it's multi-layered, at least for me, right? Like, I'm called to do men's work. I'm called to do the grid work. I'm called to, work with certain companies. I'm called to do the podcast. I'm called, in different directions. But somehow it's all in one web, right? Like it's all in the same spider web. This piece connects to that piece. There's all these interweavings, right? And so for the people that are curious, how do I find purpose? How does one individual find purpose? How does one, align with that? I really like what you said, where it's like we're already aligned with it. And yeah, there's sometimes detours where people, have certain level of free will, so they might make certain, I like my friend says, failing forward, right? Like where you make a mistake, but you're learning from it and you're continuing to progress forward. And I think that, there's those moments for every single individual. I don't care what it looks like on Instagram, right? So it's like those moments are actually where we grow the most. Those challenges, if we face them and choose love over fear, which I believe everything distills down to in every moment, is choosing love over fear and just doing it through the fear, then that's when the universe, for me at least, has given the biggest rewards. The biggest, like, oh, you went and you did that. I know for you that was really difficult and you did it anyways. Here's this beautiful time at the beach or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a big shift. Sometimes it's a big shift. Sometimes it's something really small, or it may seem small, and then it can evolve into something. But, you know, gaining that connection with spirit and that attunement with self and connecting to that higher place and really developing intuition, especially for men, because for women it's very, natural. Especially for men, I think developing that intuition to really listen and hear spirit, whether it's not actually hearing, it can be, images or dreams or just that opening, right? Allows for the guidance, the higher guidance, like not from the mind. It's coming from the heart and from the highest self.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And it's also what, at least for me, has been the truth in the last few years, is that there's this concept or this idea that the connection to spirit is done kind of in the same way by all. I think it's unique for every single one, but also for men and for women, I find that it's very different in the way that men can connect and women connect with life and with spirit. And that's also that in majority of the cases, I don't work with men because I really specialize in that connection that women already feel, the sensitivity that we carry, the womb as a portal. And men find it more, I believe, more in the external relations to life.
Mm,
And through that, they reflect it to what they feel inside.
mm. Yeah,
I don't know how you experience it.
yeah, for me, I think when you say external, do you mean like external synchronicities in this reality?
Yes, partly, but also relationships with others and conversations, and just like the external input brings the internal.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me it's both. But I've always been, my whole life I've been very connected to my feminine side, you know? So I think for the majority of men it is more external because they may not be as connected to that intuition, you know? But I was very close with my mom my whole life, and she was very intuitive, and she just kind of passed that on to me very, and I think it was just natural for me. Like I would just connect with the trees and the land and everything, and like you said, in a way that I didn't see anybody else around me doing. You know, like I would be doing Reiki on the trees and connecting with, sitting on a field of clovers and finding that one four-leaf clover, and things like that, and the animals really deeply connected with the animals always. I can't say that I would like speak to them, but I would feel them. I would feel their energy. I'd feel what they needed, what they wanted. And throughout my life, my dogs have really helped me deepen in that relationship. And now I have three birds, and we have bees in the backyard. So all those are like deepening my connection with that, as well as, in nature, of course.
I love that so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's hard to, like, for me, my love, my deep one of my deepest loves is like for the earth, like that love for Pachamama, for Mama Gaia. Like I felt it so deeply like a couple of weeks ago that I was like, this has been my like deepest romance, my deepest love was with the earth, and I like really felt her energy, and I was like laying on her with my stomach, and we were like breathing together. It was a really special moment, So I think she's very hurt. She's going through a lot, and she really needs as much help as we can give her as a society, as a global community. It's really important in this moment
Yeah.
more than ever before. And I know they've been talking about it since the 60s, but this is like she really needs our help.
Yeah. And what last week came also up in another conversation that I was channeling through the Akashic Records is that we are coming kind of into a pendulum swing. So from one opposite of like so much hurt, especially to this archetype of the mother, right? Of Mother Earth, but also to the feminine, to the mother. And it's just we needed to experience. It's very tough to really accept it, but that we really had to go all the way to that extreme polarity to be able to swim back to the other side. So we're really feeling like this in on so many levels that we really want to crawl out of our skin of like, how can there be so much evil? How can there be so much pain caused to Mother Earth, to each other, you know? So we are at this breaking point, right? We experience this also in our own journeys, right? That you're like in this point that like I cannot go any further because I can't. It's like, or I either unalive myself or I change, right? And I feel we are very much at that point. It's like we cannot take any further. Us as humans, our souls, but also Mother Earth is like, okay, let's swing the pendulum to the other side. And that's where so many things are happening. Also, the earth is quite literally cracking open and shaking herself to open. What I've seen in the Akashic Records is that she quite literally is like energetically and physically cracking open. So a lot of the earthquakes, a lot of the volcanic eruptions, and all of these things that are happening on a physical level, so that this energy that is pent up through all of the layers of the earth, all of this trauma can be released.
Hmm.
And so this is also the energy that we're feeling, right? So much trauma, like Epstein files, oh my God, so many deep, dark things that were so hidden, but so many layers are coming to the surface. and it's messy, it's chaotic, it's hurtful, you're enraged, but we need to go through all of those suppressed emotions, all of the suppressed pain, so that we can get to the other side and rebuild what we actually want and how we actually want to live on earth, right? Because otherwise, what is the other option? The end. And we don't want that. I mean, I know for a fact that there are so many awakened souls at this point that have the capacity built to lead others that are not there yet, in the sense of feeling the hope of how to carry further. But there's light beings that are having the capacity to bring forward all of those who are not there yet, so we can tip to the other side and we don't give up.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, that's a big part of the podcast, right? Is to help awaken the planet, to help people find what resonates for them, to help them, find the pieces that are going to connect something for them, and raise their frequency and open these new healing modalities or whatever it is that they find that is going to help them. It's different for every person. That's why I like to keep it as vast as possible so that people can really find what works for them. And there's something that'll work for you, for the individual, whoever's listening. So Melisa, it's been such an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you so much for, coming on and sharing about the Akashic Records and everything that you're doing. I think this is just the beginning, and I'm excited for what's to come. So thank you so much. And you're always welcome back on the podcast at any time if you ever want to come back on.
Thank you so much, Peter. It was lovely to have this conversation with you today. And yeah, excited to continue the conversation.
For sure. All right. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Talk to you soon. Ciao, ciao.